when I was at Hippo Camp, Sonia Huber, a past guest on this podcast, author of the forthcoming memoir, Supremely Tiny Acts, a memoir of a day. Yeah, she'll be back on the show. She had a talk that was called Tending the Fallow. I love this idea of the in-between projects, stories, books, etc. How do you process that period? It's a time we don't cultivate or don't often cultivate because we always have to feel like go. Gotta hustle. And so I figured I'd invite my good friend Ruby McConnell back to the show to see what she's up to, and what she's thinking about, given that we're in that post-ground truth phase. That's her latest book. It was a Ground Truth, Geological Survey of a Life, an incredible collection of essays. I love that book. If you like nature essays and what they mean in the larger picture, and if you just love great writing, you should buy this book. It's an incredible book from a small press in Portland, Oregon. Well worth your money. Anyway, book came out, last year. It was an Oregon Book Award finalist. Yeah, is good. So check it. So this Tending the Fallow gets to the idea of seasonality. Professional athletes or Olympians, they aren't in 100% top shape the entire year. They use periodization and seasonality to dictate their training. There's an off season, a preseason, regular season, postseason if you're lucky enough, on and on and on. And in the off season, it's not like they're sitting around getting fat. Nah, they used to maybe in the old days. No, they're training. They're working on a new skill. Michael Jordan working on that fadeaway jumper. His off season wasn't lazy. It was allowing the bodies and minds to recover and also develop some new skills. So then when the real thing starts up again, boom, you're there. So that's where we're at today. Oh, by the way, this is the Creative Nonfiction Podcast, the show where I speak to badass people about the art and craft of telling true stories. I'm Brendan O'Mara. Welcome. Support for the Creative Nonfiction Podcast is brought to you by West Virginia Wesleyan College's low residency and an FA in creative writing. Now in its 10th year, whoa. This affordable program boasts a low student-to-faculty ratio and a strong sense of community. Recent CNF faculty include Randon Billings-Noble, Jeremy Jones, and CNF Pod alum Sarah Einstein. There's also fiction and poetry tracks. Recent faculty include Ashley Bryant-Phillips and Jacinta Townsend, as well as Diane Gilliam and Savannah Sipple. No matter your discipline, if you're looking to up your craft or learn a new one, consider West Virginia Wesleyan, right in the heart of Appalachia. mfa.wvwc.edu for more information and dates of enrollment. And consider supporting the show via Patreon. That's patreon.com/CNFpod. Shop around if you want to support the community. There's the audio magazine only tier, and then from there you get transcripts and some coaching, phone calls, good stuff. I just paid out the writers for the last audio magazine, and you make that possible. The show is free, but it ain't cheap. Patreon.com/CNFpod. And show notes to this and more are at BrendanO'Mara.com. Hey, there you can sign up for my up to 11 newsletter, book recommendations, book raffles, articles, prompts, podcasts, you name it. First of the month, no spam. Subvert the algorithm, man. You can't beat it. So like I said, Ruby is the author of Ground Truth. When we had spoken about it on episode 202. You can go check that out. I'll also be in the show notes at BrendanO'Mara.com. Hey. It's a geological survey of a life, and she's also the author of A Woman's Guide to the Wild. Great stuff. We talk about how Ruby works in the face of hopelessness, stalling out, all the projects she has going, and they're exciting and good, and I can't wait for them to come out whenever they do. Just great excuse to have her back on the show, am I right? And also, like I said earlier at the top of the show, tending the fallow, as my good friend Sonia Huber would say. Credit where credit is due. That is all Sonia. So good. Ruby is at Ruby Gone Wild on Twitter and Instagram. You can keep the conversation going at CNF Pod and at Brendan O'Mara on Twitter or Instagram. CNF Pod is still in the Underage Court of Appeals on Instagram. Did it die? Most likely. Ruby's work can be found at rubymcconnell.com, and you can listen to her right now. So you're kind of in that period between projects. So how have you been tending the fallow, as Sonia would say?
Oh man, it's like such an interesting question. Yeah, I like that language, and I think that the way that I think about it is that I have to sort of feed my imagination. And one of the things that I discovered in this year of quieting was that I do a lot of my writing as what I can only describe as a kind of walking meditation. And I do it specifically in hiking, long distances, often in solitude. And I do that, I used to do it with swimming. And then, in this period, I wasn't doing as much hiking. The trails were really full, and I didn't sort of have that freedom that I wanted to do that. And I certainly wasn't going to the pool. And I kind of lost that sense of repetitive movement that was somehow settling my body and allowing my mind to think on a different level than I think when I'm actually trying to craft language. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like a lot of people talk about, like, they talk about sitting down and thinking about what they want to write, or, they talk about like writer's block. Oh, I can't sit down and think of anything. I go, gosh, I don't even try to sit down until I have something to say, and I tend to really just, walk away from writing very easily. Like right now I'm under deadline. And I should be writing every day. And because, technically one would think that that's what one would do when under deadline, and I'm not writing at all. And I'm not concerned about it. I am processing something. And when I'm ready to write it, I will write it, and I will write it quickly. And it'll probably come out sort of in big gulps. So I'm just not concerned. I'm waiting, and I'll kind of know when I'm ready. And that's something that I've been doing from a very young age, that process of what my mom calls percolating. And there's no consciousness to it whatsoever. I turn my mind completely. And then I'll wake up here, hopefully in a couple of days, hopefully sometime soon, and be ready and probably write really productively for many hours and well through to completion and with ease. It's just my process.
I like that. I like that idea. It reminds me of like gray whales that will come to the surface, and then they'll go on a deep dive, and they're down there for a long time, and then they come back up. And I love this idea of like going away for a while and just like, you know what, I got to go on this little trip, and then I'm going to come back up for air, and that's when I'm gonna just do some sprinting here and get some stuff out. But you got to step away and recharge in that way. I really like hearing you say that. It's a great process.
I think too, there's an element of engaging the brain body. I mean, we like, as humans, we like to sort of think that our brain is just what sits inside our cranium, but in fact, like it's a body-wide organ that interacts with, all of our other organs and all of our sensory, our proprioception. And I think for me in particular, because I come out of movement arts as well as, sort of heady scientific research, I'm very aware of needing to feed the whole brain and wanting to engage the whole brain in my work. And so for me, like, physicality is an important part of writing process, especially because the task of actually putting words onto paper is so detached from the body. That I feel like the creative part of it for me has to happen with that larger brain before I can kind of isolate it down and use the just sort of like the communication part to get it on the page.
I'm big on carrying notebooks and pencils with me wherever I go. Like when you go on long walks or hikes by yourself, do you constantly keep some sort of implements on you so you can snatch those ideas out of the ether?
No, I don't have ideas.
Bullshit.
I mean, really, if you were to ask me, and my mom does, because my father and I do this. So, I mean, this is so complete that, like, in my day-to-day life, I have to learn to coach friends and people who know me. I've learned to say silence means I'm thinking, because it's like people will ask me a question sometimes. It'll be, you know, a beat and then another beat and then maybe 3 or 4. And like, there's no expression on my face, but I've kind of gone away. There's like a deadness to my eyes. And it drives people nuts because they can't tell what's happening. And I can't give them any information about it. There's no partial process for me in the vast majority of my work. So like what I do, so I feed it, right? I do my research and I do like my background. I sort of feed my brain everything I think it needs about a topic. And then sometimes I've gotten a little bit better about kind of getting to like a skeleton outline. And then I put it down completely. And if you were to ask me if I was thinking about my work, I would say yes, but I would not have any thoughts to share with you. And I go to a very quiet place in my psyche. And then seemingly all at once, I will have, you know, entire paragraphs. I'll just sort of know that I can write it. And I'll wake up the next morning and just sit down and start writing. And if I do have specific thoughts, I won't need to write it down. It will become a part of my fundamental knowledge base in my brain. It won't be fleeting. It will be a truth that I can recognize and access again.
It's fundamentally different than I think a lot of people go about it, and it's great to hear you sort of work through that, and that it's very I don't know, it feels more energy or instinctually driven, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely, that's how it feels, and I mean that's also a lot of how I learn. I tell this story a lot at sort of events and especially like when I do library events. You know, when I didn't learn how to read until the 2nd grade. And I mean, I couldn't read at all. And I could like recite the phonetics rules. I could talk about how to read. I could tell you, you know, like I could explain to other kids how to read, and I could do the alphabet and I could do math, and I could not read at all. And this was, you know, like there was like parent teacher conferences about this. This is in the 80s, you know, like this, I was way behind. And I went to a school where I had the same teacher for first, we'd combined grades for 1st and 2nd grade. So she was going to get me again the next year. And it was a super progressive place, a really, really wonderful school. And she said, you know, she can't read. And I'm not worried about it because she's bright and she's engaged and she's interested in reading. And my sense is that she's waiting for something. And so she was like, just, I don't know, read to her a lot and have her be around books. And my dad started taking me to the beautiful downtown library in Portland regularly as a special treat on a weeknight, all by myself, to go into this massive library. And he would leave me alone in the children's library to wander. at a time of day when there weren't other kids there. I had this whole massive library to myself. And we did that for many months. And I woke up one morning and read Little Women.
Just like out of the blue.
That was
You just like
the
it
first
was
thing
there.
I read. I read the whole book. I stayed in bed. I mean, everybody in my family remembers it was like that. And that's how I write, is I sort of like percolate, and then it kind of comes out as a whole thing.
Yeah, it's like the big swell of the tsunami is really under the ocean until it finally spills out on the shore, right?
Yeah, and it's really particular to language. I did something similar in college with Spanish. I had taken Spanish for 4 years in high school, and it was the only thing that I got C's in. I mean, I struggled. I could not do it. It was mystifying to me. And I continued to take it for some reason, even though I was so bad at it. And, my dad spoke 7 languages. So languages were easy for him. Everybody in my family spoke extra languages. So I just sort of persevered. And I woke up one day and walked into this intermediate Spanish class and could speak Spanish, to the point that people in the class were like, "Have you been putting us on? Because it's completely different." And I was like, "Yeah, I've done this before. I don't know. It's like the light bulb went on." I have no explanation for it, but it's happened several times. And it's interesting that it seems to be both learning around language and the crafting of language that I'm processing it someplace in my mind that I don't have access to. And I have to kind of wait until the whole picture is there.
Now, you shared with me that this year you wrote 2 proposals, 5 grants, an entire book that'll come out next year, several essays, landed an agent, and yet you're more frustrated than ever. So kind of take me through what this is. Let's unpack that a little bit.
And Ground Truth was a finalist for an Oregon Book Award, and I'm still frustrated.
Wow. I didn't realize that about Ground Truth. Well deserved. I just didn't know that. Oh, that's, yeah. So, yeah, it sounds like an incredibly productive year as a writer. Like, that's objectively productive, and landing I think you've been unagented, like, for all your other work, if I'm not mistaken, and now you've got an agent.
Yes.
So, yeah, so why are you frustrated?
Well, I'm frustrated. It was frustrating to launch 2 books in a pandemic, and to kind of lose that moment. I think that especially because Ground Truth ended up being recognized as, something worth reading by Oregon Literary Arts, by the Oregon Book Awards. I felt like it really missed its audience, even though it spoke kind of directly to the moment. And so that was frustrating for me, that a lot of the messages that I had in Ground Truth, I felt like were really necessary and what people needed. And to feel like I couldn't kind of get that out at that time felt frustrating. I talk a lot about catastrophe and time scale and survival and perspective in terms of, scale and time scale. And I think that really spoke to the pandemic moment. So that I had some frustration around that launch, which I think, a lot of people did. I think there's a lot of great books that got lost in that spring. The machine of publishing is very frustrating in and of itself. It's very slow moving. I think the process of writing book proposals, to me, it doesn't really energize me. It doesn't make me, book proposal writing doesn't make me more excited about my book.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're having to sort of parse your work for profit, and you're having to, the way in which the industry is designed to force you to categorize yourself, the way that they want you to so conveniently place yourself in a familiar place on the bookshelf, that process, right, of comparison titling. being this is like, and to be someone like me who is really, my work doesn't conveniently fit a lot of those niches. So for me, like having to sort of bend to that is frustrating to me. And then also, gosh, the writing community can be a tough place.
Mm-hmm.
The writing community can be a tough place. And I feel like it is, I feel like that the writing community that I'm exposed to is not as good at reciprocity as other communities that I participate in. And that's in a tangible way, and also in, sort of an emotional and psychological way too, so I felt frustrated by that. But I also, I had some really weird things happen, like I did a radio panel where one of the panelists became completely convinced that I had not yet spoken. This is like a senior writer. He's like, Ruby, don't you want to go now? And I was like, man, I just spoke for like 6 minutes.
Oh, man.
And he was like, and the sound guy also thought that I had not yet spoken. And the two of them were like having a conversation about me where they were referring to me as Ruby, whatever her name is. And it was just like, there was something about it that I was like, yeah. I feel like this is because I'm like the younger woman on the panel. And like, I don't know. So I had some strange things like that happen. I had a well-known, well-respected journalist interview me at length, and then use my interview as an outline for a feature piece, and quote me almost verbatim and not credit me or mention my name whatsoever for the piece.
Oh. Ew. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I had, I had sort of like several of these kinds of things happen where I just sort of thought, like the same frustrations around the outdoor community that led me to write The Woman's Guide to the Wild. I felt like, oh, here they are in the writing world. This is how it goes. Like, this is how it manifests in the writing world. And it made me tired.
I can see that being just so tired and demoralizing. Like, why even put up the fight? To why even proceed or endure in this? So there has to be some element of of love in there to to stand up and put out the work in the face of such demoralizing acts of a community that is devoid of reciprocity in your experience.
Right. And I mean, I think it, that's not to say that I don't have great relationships with writers that, help me and uplift me. And, like that, those definitely exist. But, man, I really had a sensation of sort of, it's like trying to get in the lifeboat and having them kind of thunk you on the head with the oars over and over again. I mean, that was sort of my experience, was, and I mean, still, like I grow really weary of predominantly male editors in predominantly environmental writing coming back saying that they don't understand, like they don't see the point of writing that is largely about the recognition of women.
Jeez.
I can't, like I just can't with that as a response. I just can't, you know? So it's just been really interesting also. I mean, and I actually I got two agents in two different genres within a week of one another. And then, did a bunch of work for one of them and was really excited about it. And then she jumped ship suddenly on all of her clients, just pulled out of the industry entirely. So I felt, like there was kind of a lot of spinning of wheels. And I don't know how much of that is related to pandemic. I had lots and lots of people not be able to follow through in a year when, I was very productive and I did have books to promote and I was managing to stay motivated, and I just needed, people to be there and be solid and to continue to be productive. And for one reason or another, sort of it all kind of, when push came to shove and it was okay, and then you do your piece, that wasn't getting done this year. And I don't know if that's always, I try, I don't take things personally. And I'm more than happy to blame the pandemic, but I am hoping that when summer is over, that we will see sort of a new energy to people, because I didn't feel like I didn't feel like my army was strong. Art of War, how strong is your army? This year, I didn't feel, and that made me feel, like that was kind of a hard place to sit in, what with everything else that was going on. I could have used a really strong army, because I felt like I had momentum, and I worry about the loss of momentum, even though I'm in this really great place. And I feel like I'm like, no, like you still have it. You've got an agent, you've got your proposals, like you've got irons in the fire. But that stall out, I think for me was psychologically hard to take.
So in the absence of having a strong army around you this year, where have you found the strength to do the work that you're excited about? I'm like, gosh, I'm really excited about my projects. I got some really great projects going on that I can't imagine not wanting to write these books. And so I think that's been really useful. Also, like I did a deep dive into research, which for me is always energizing. I research all day long, every day, never grow tired of research. I don't think there's such a thing as too much research. I don't think that you can ever dig deep enough. And so I feel like I had curiosity and excitement for what I was doing, and the time to do it. And that has sort of like kept me super motivated, just my own excitement and interest and curiosity about my own topics. Don't write a book if you think you're going to get sick of the topic. Yeah. Ain't that the truth? Can you, without giving away too much, can you share what you're working on, these book projects?
Yeah, I can a little bit, not a whole lot.
Whatever you're comfortable with. So, some people are like, I'm working on it. I don't talk about it. Some people are like, yeah, I'm writing a book about rugby. I don't know. But yeah, so I don't know. What are you working on?
Well, I have Wilderness in the American Spirit, which is coming out in fall of 2022. And that is sort of a sister book to Ground Truth. It's not personal essays. But what I do is I use the Applegate Trail, which is a very little known southern route of the Oregon Trail, and stories about places and people along the Applegate Trail as a long form analogy for the American relationship to the environment. And I use the analogy of the Applegate Trail as a framework to talk about how we've arrived to this place that we find ourselves now with respect to the environment, and also to suggest a way to chart a path forward. So I'm sort of in my mind, I'm building a trail. I'm blazing that trail as I go. And the stories that I tell about along the trail sort of progress through time. So there's the story of the Applegates there, of course, like you kind of hit up the Donner Party because who's going to skip the Donner Party, but there's also a Mouseketeer, and there's the Umpqua Community College shooting. And, how are these environmental stories? Well, they're issues of the body, and they speak to our value system, and they speak to what's going on in the rest of the country and the mindset of the people. And so for me, that's just really rich fodder. And I got to do a lot of field work, during the lockdown, and go to a lot of places that were really out of the way, and that people haven't seen, and I feel really excited about exposing all of this history that people really don't know, that's so fundamental to the identity of the American people and how that has brought us to where we are now. So that's what I'm working on. It's not actually done yet. I still have a couple of chapters to do. That's the deadline.
That's the deadline. I was like, is that the deadline you're avoiding right now?
I'm not avoiding it. I'm percolating.
That's right. Call back. I love it.
Well, because it's true, it's funny because it's true. Yeah, I'm percolating on it. In part because I've written myself into current time, and I'm sort of grappling with these end of the 20th century chapters, and also with the charting a path forward. And this summer I struggled with hope, with starting on, I think, January 6th 2021. I started to question hope. And I used to work for Greenpeace. I've been doing environmental stuff for 20-30 years. I used to knock on doors, and the things that I used to canvass about for Greenpeace when I was 17 years old have come to pass. What used to be a warning is now a reality. And for the very first time as an environmental thinker and activist and writer, I really I struggled to find hope. And you can't chart a path forward for people if you don't come from a place of hope. So I spent the summer finding hope.
And did you, over the course of writing this project, is that where you found the hope again?
I'm still percolating.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still percolating, and I think that's because I am waiting to see what unfolds. I'm not sure that we know what the contours of this moment really are, so I can't write to them. I think that there is an element of waiting and watching and wishing that I have to do in order to, sort of illuminate what things are possible. You can't chart a path forward if you're still deep in the thickets and thrashing around. Like the experience of being lost in the wilderness, you're not ever going to find yourself, which is really, if you or become unlost, if you never calm and take stock of where you are with the relation, the process of getting unlost sort of starts with identifying the things around you and recognizing your situation. And a lot of people are lost for a long time before they know they're lost.
Yeah.
And a lot of people wander randomly before they stop and take notice of where they really are. And I think that's what I'm doing right now. I think that we're transforming, and I'm curious about what comes next, so that I can speak really clearly and directly to where we really are. because I want my work to be, useful and important, to give other people hope and to spur them on to action. So I need to get it right. And a lot is being revealed about the last, especially 20 years, and what's really been going on under the surface. And so I'm taking time to soak that in, and to make sure that I'm not working from false assumptions. So
Right.
I'm waiting. So that's Wilderness in the American Spirit. And then I have a middle grade book that I was sort of brought in to write, that's out for submission right now, about the International Space Station.
Oh, cool.
Which I can't say with a straight face because everybody goes, really? And what I have to say to that is, space writing is environmental writing. Science writing for middle graders is, in all of its forms, environmental writing. Science literacy, especially for young people, is environmental writing. But most importantly, I once worked at space camp. And pretty much nothing qualifies you to write books on space more than being that particular kind of geek. And it's an empty spot on the shelf. Sort of most curious, I have for about 6 years now been cooking on a true crime story that is just a totally fantastic untold story. And it's local. It like a lot of the things in the story happened blocks from my house. It's just been a wild ride. It's a different kind of research. It's kind of deep research that I really enjoy. It is the kind of story where every piece of it, every chapter could be titled, "But wait, it gets worse."
Well, that's a page turner.
Super excited about it. It's the only thing I've ever written that I think is like really got commercial potential. It's really, it is just such a great story, and I feel lucky to be to have stumbled upon it. And I think it's going to go. I'm hopeful that it's going to go. We'll see.
Dude, I know you've had a frustrating year, but you've got some amazing projects in the works and in the can and everything. I can't wait to dig into all this amazing stuff that you've been talking about. So this is just good. Kudos for being able to have this kind of year in the face of hopelessness and frustration.
I know. I'm really a very cheerful person.
Oh, I know. Every time that we've spoken, and the only times we've spoken are on mic, it's a sheer joy to talk to you, and you're an energizing person to talk to. And I love it. I always leave these conversations, wanting more. And I love having these conversations with you. And but it doesn't matter. The stakes being what they are, there is a great deal of hopelessness and despair, and certainly the frustration that you've just had to deal with in the publishing world. Yeah, it can break anybody down, no matter how optimistic or cheerful you can be on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and I think, but it's a good lesson. Like, it's really important to ask yourself why you write.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what I was trying to ask you earlier. Just like, when you just feel so beaten down, like what is bringing you back to it? Like why keep writing? Why keep doing this in the face of that?
Because none of that matters. Because that is all the facade of the writing industry. Do you know what I mean? That's writing Twitter. That's the external part of writing. The reality is that I think that I have something to say, and I think that my writing has purpose. I never once in my life, I still don't wake up and go, I want to be a writer. What I do is I wake up and I say, I think I have something important or interesting to say. And increasingly, as I've had some small success. I say, I think that people enjoy the way I say it. And I think I have a talent for this. And I think that it's a great privilege to be able to spend the kind of time writing that I get to spend doing this. And I think that under those circumstances, you just keep going. I look at, writing is a ministry. It's, and for me, it is, it's a walking meditation, and it is, a process that I think is important. I think that dialogue is important. I think that education is important. I think science is important. I think women's voices are important. I think women writers are important. And I think the arts are important. So to allow yourself to stop and to back away from that because the game isn't fun, I think is a disservice to yourself, most of all, but also to your potential audience and the people who read your writing. I mean, the most disheartening writing experience I ever had produced by far the most beautiful responses. I wrote a personal essay for Huffington Post and got absolutely trolled, just in the worst way, by the Christian right. Really vicious, on and on and on. And it was really not pleasant.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, 2 years later, I still have people write to me and say, I just found this piece. And thank you for writing it. And here is my story. And let me tell you, that essay was about love and me marrying my husband. People did not like that. And I was told that my husband and I are a perfect example of people selfishly marrying for love. And I thought, well, that's the right kind of troll to have. And what the other side of that is I could do an entire book of love stories people have sent to me in response to that essay. People have sent me stories about marriages. They said, your story is our story, but we've been together for 25 years and never told anyone because we were afraid that people would judge us like they're judging you right now, like we see in the comments, and tell me the story of their love. Stories of lost love, stories of unrequited love. I have had people write me just because they want to find love. People write to me with their heartache and their celebration of their love. And there is no amount of trolling that could possibly diminish the beauty of someone writing to you and saying, thank you, you have given me hope in love. So you get up and you keep writing, even if you're not making money, even if you launch your book into the void of the pandemic, even, if your agent has to bail, even if you have to revise 1 million times, even if you're going to miss a deadline, even if it's hard or you don't want to, or you're not getting, recognition, or you get cut down by your peers because you are getting recognition, you keep doing it because somewhere out there is someone who needs to hear what you have to say. And if you are authentic and true to yourself and what you do, your work will find that person.
You just gave me goosebumps, Ruby.
Well, it's true. It's absolutely true. Things have a way. The universe is more elegant than you could ever possibly imagine. And the human mind wants to dictate time scale. And that is just not the way it works. So we press on through storms and pandemics and love and loss, because you do not know how things will come to pass.
Well, it's so beautifully put, Ruby, and I feel like I could talk to you for another 6 hours, but but I'll cut this off because I know we're going to have several hours worth of talking in the future when more of your amazing work hits the shelves and so forth. So I just thank you so much for coming on the show in short notice and for talking about the year you've had and the work you're doing, and it's a great inspiration, and I just thank you for being you, and thank you for your work.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate that you provide a platform for authors to talk about craft and for us to learn from one another. I think that it's good for writers to listen to one another.
Great stuff, right? Thank you, Ruby, for coming on the show, short notice. And thanks to West Virginia Wesleyan College's MFA in Creative Writing for the support. Also, thanks to all the wonderful Patreons at patreon.com/cnfpod. And I was debating whether to do a parting shot this week or not, and I think that might be indication that it's good enough reason not to. I have something I feel like saying, but I just don't feel like doing it right now. And I'll just sit on that, and I will say it next week. It'll be a little closer to the newsletter time. It'll be after the newsletter comes out, and it has to do with something I want to put in the newsletter based on an experience I had. And so, yes. So, next week, parting shot, it'll tether to the newsletter. So, if you're not subscribed to the newsletter, come on now. All right. I feel like throwing some French fries in the air fryer and sitting in front of the TV and watching some mindless programming. You cool with that? Good. So, as I am wont to say, stay wild, CNFers, and if you can do, interview. See ya.